Welcome to But Why? Real talk on messy minds and messier systems, the podcast where two psychologists overanalyze everything so you don't have to. We're here to unpack the weird, the worrying, and the wildly unjust with just enough existential dread to keep it interesting. I'm Dr. Kristin.
And I'm Dr. Laura, and let's dive into the mess. So today we're tackling 100 men, 1 gorilla, and the myth of invulnerability with Dr. Pete Olusoga. So, Pete, I'll just give a little intro to you. So Pete's a psychologist and senior lecturer in psychology at Sheffield Hallam University. He completed his PhD in 2012, where he focused on stress and coping in elite sports coaching, and his current work focuses on burnout, well-being, and creating sustainability in high-performance environments. He's also an internationally recognised researcher in sports psychology and speaks at many events and festivals and international conferences where he talks around topics like self-care, mindfulness, burnout, diversity and inclusion, which you guys know we love talking about these topics here. And you might recognise Pete because he regularly engages with media, so you might have heard him as a regular guest on BBC Radio 4's All in the Mind. And he's also the producer and host of the award-winning podcast 80% Mental, where he explores psychology underpinning performance, sport, health, and well-being with expert guests. So, Pete, we're super excited to have you here. Like I say, a lot of the kind of topics that you really dig into are things that we love chatting about here. So we're excited to have you, and thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you for the invitation. I'm also super excited to be here. All sounds quite grand that when you read out that bio there. Hopefully I've got
it is
to live
grand,
up to that now.
No, I like
No
it.
pressure.
I like it though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as well, like, you know, obviously we're working in like the sports psych kind of space as well, and there's always such kind of positive words kind of from your work kind of around the scene. So yeah, we're excited to dig into maybe a slightly random topic around, I guess, gorillas, which I need to be introduced to myself.
It is really fun from this point of view is like, okay, we're all three sports psychs, but discussing a broader cultural issue, which I think is quite fun, and maybe we'll have some interesting takes, especially when it comes to like well-being and burnout and stuff like that. So I guess, should we jump right into it?
Let's do it.
Yes.
So guys, Pete, Laura, who do you think would win in a fight? 100 men or a silverback gorilla? And keep in mind, the men are unarmed.
Okay.
Shall I go first with this? Because I have thoughts.
Go on.
Okay.
Laura's not had long to...
No, I mean... So, I mean, I guess my initial question, and maybe this is because I'm a psychologist, is why are 100 men trying to fight a gorilla? I mean, that's the first question. But, I mean, obviously, the gorilla would immediately rip the first guy's head off, not even think twice about it, not break a sweat, and then the other 99 would collectively shit their pants and run away. So it's a no contest for me, I think.
Yeah, because you're expecting just the rest of the 99 guys to look at their first friend being sacrificed and being like, I'm fine being the next person in line for that.
This is a bloodied, mutilated corpse just lying in front of them and like, right, my turn. Like,
Yeah. Laura, what do you think?
This makes sense. But also, what was the first thing I thought about, I don't know if you guys have seen this online, where there's like the AI like recreations of random groups of like fictional creatures and characters fighting each other. So I always had that in my mind. I think there's some online where you have, I don't know, there's like 100 Harry Potters versus like 2 Balrogs or something. But I was thinking about this and how that would play out. But I wonder if AI would say put in the component of fear and people actually running away rather than the intention to fight and win.
Okay, so a few of those simulations have actually been run, of course. And I wasn't actually, there's an article on it that I wasn't going to bring in because it seemed maybe a bit tangential, but now that you've mentioned the AI thing, I might do that. But first, I want to read off some facts about gorillas. Maybe some context for this. So obviously we're not talking about the smartest or toughest men. The thought was 100 random men. So you go to the mall or you go to, your closest like city center and gather 100 people, 100 men. Who's going to win? Here's some gorilla facts. Silverback. A full-grown silverback male can lift up to 2,000 pounds. Okay, so Laura, I know you do kilos, don't you, specifically? That's like
I mean, I don't
just
really do
under
numbers
1,000
in
kilos.
general.
I just don't do numbers. We're qual people here. So if an average silverback male can lift 2,000 pounds, the average human man can lift 135. They have a huge muscular build, and their bite force is 1,300 psi, which is higher than a lion. They have really thick skin and dense muscles, so like injuring them in the first place, if you punch a gorilla, that's not going to do anything.
It's so stupid.
I know, it's ridiculous. And so I'm trying to decide if I want to do like the quick ChatGPT consensus on it first, or show you the video of the men on Barstool Sports discussing it first. I think I'll show you the video of the men first because
Okay, yeah, that sounds great.
It'll just make me sound better no matter what. So I'm going to share this, and it might look a little awkward on screen.
Internet with people saying whether or not 100 people could or could not defeat one gorilla in a fight.
Mm-hmm.
I am firmly of the belief that 100 people could easily beat a gorilla in a fight. Okay, all right.
I think
Especially this dude.
10 guys that could really hold their own, that knew what they were doing, like 10 UFC fighters.
But the key part of this
10
is everyone's got to be about the
Yeah, you got to be about the
because the first guy who goes in is going to get his head ripped off by the gorilla. And then everyone else has to be like, but hold on, we gotta still do this.
It's gotta be like the Nazi meth soldier.
Well, if it's one by one, no.
Well, no, I know, but like someone's getting there, someone's dying.
Like the idea that we have as human beings is that we can do a battle plan, put that together. We're not gonna go after this guy like that guy go after Steven Seagal, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna run at him, then he's gonna step to the side, touch me, then I'll have a heart attack and die. Then you go at him. No, you gotta just, if you're about the you gotta. I think you could do it with 10. If they're heavyweights, you just surround, you grab limbs, and then you just start breaking bones.
Yeah.
You just start breaking bones.
But
How does one break a bone?
I would honestly just grab his windpipe and snap it.
It's totally doable.
I think you get 2 guys that just
no,
go for
you
the
wouldn't.
eyes.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah, take the eyes out. If you get the eyes, then you can beat the fuck out of anything.
Also, do gorillas have balls? I'd assume they do. Just hammers
I was
balls.
thinking that too.
Of course you were.
They got balls. They got tiny dicks.
The problem, though, is what happens when the gorilla gets a hold of one person and rips his head off, and then everyone's like, fuck.
Or just starts swinging him around like a Donkey Kong.
Right. Is everyone still about that shit?
You have to stay about the shit.
So,
Wow.
Magnificent.
and that might have been the most coherent version of an argument I probably found. Yeah, so initial thoughts, guys.
I mean, I'm in agreement that, you know, if it's about... I mean, I don't even know why I'm seriously having this conversation.
I know.
It's ridiculous. But you know, it's about that dedication, isn't it? And like, it's just in a realistic situation. Like, no one wants it anymore. As soon as the first guy gets clubbed to death, no one wants this. Everyone's suddenly very, very much regretting their life decisions that have brought them to this point where they're facing off against a silverback gorilla.
I'm regretting my life decisions having to like do thought pieces about this in the first place.
I mean, that too.
There are a lot of good psychological elements in their discussion, though, I think, really. So if we're thinking about dedication, for sure. But I also think that like you're saying at the beginning, this is literally if they're unarmed, right? Like, I suppose, I don't know, like, do you guys think that if like this one group of 100 men had the chance to go and make a battle plan, like have all of the kit and arms that they needed, then?
Oh, with weapons? Like, if you have a tank, obviously, that's going to be a bit different than you just... It's 100 random men. It has to be 100 random men.
Just random, with no time to plan it out, to get resources.
Just dropping them in.
Pick them?
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah,
Well,
I've got some
because
people.
there's I have some people in mind that I'd quite like to see go up against the silverback gorilla.
Yeah. You guys can totally win. Yeah, we believe in you. Laura, this is your first kind of real exposure to the man versus gorilla debate. I'll just quickly say what ChatGPT said. Okay, just to explain how in depth some of these things went, there were men saying, well, if all, I can't even get this out. If all 100 of us stood on each other's shoulders, then the sheer force of us would crush it. That was one argument.
Wow, but you probably missed, like, let's be honest.
But it was great. It was great though, because I mean, you had like, Steve Irwin. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, so his son was on, like, did a TikTok or whatever, like giving his sort of expert opinion. They're kind of gorilla experts and anthropologists and scientists all weighing in on this like absolutely ridiculous debate. Brilliant.
It brought together the like dude bros and the science bros into one.
Mm-hmm.
So ChatGPT did say it could work if you had a swarm attack with sacrifice and in a very small room. So,
like, the sacrifice is kind of a key word there. That's an important word that we don't want to just gloss over, right? Because you don't want to be the first two guys in the room.
You don't want to be the one who's sacrificed, and
No.
I would argue I probably wouldn't really want to sacrifice anyone for this useless, unethical fight in the first place. The funniest thing is the fact that this was taken so far as a thought experiment. Is just like, yes, it's hilarious, and we have the fortune and misfortune as psychologists to see the funny, but also the not so sure about all these like online trends. So I guess we should maybe explore why this is almost culturally important at this point in time, this bizarre obsession with hypothetical dominance. So, Pete, I just wanted to get your opinions on this. So, like, why do so many men feel that they need to prove their strength through these absurd contests, whether they're hypothetical or not?
It's funny, isn't it? It's weird. I think, like, if we think about masculinity and femininity to the same degree, if we think about masculinity as a social construct, and I think a lot of people will roll their eyes at the phrase social construct, but if we think about what that actually means, then it like gives us a lot of clues here, right? So social construct is just the behaviors, the practices that exist in a specific culture, in a specific context, at a specific time, right? So if you think about masculinity as a social construct, these are just the behaviors that are typically associated with being male, right? Notice there's nothing to do with biology in there. It's all just about these kind of culturally accepted practices, and they change over time and they change in context. So, we were talking before about basketball. So the behaviors associated with being a man playing basketball are perhaps different to the behaviors and practices associated with, me being a man. I don't know, as a university lecturer, I do different things in those different contexts. So I think if we look at it overall, traditionally, these behaviors are, and practices associated with men are things like strength. They're things like dominance. We get socialized into this sort of idea that we have to be strong and dominant and brave and be able to fight animals, which is, it's ridiculous. But that's why I think we get stuck in this position where, all right, well, if this is what's sort of culturally accepted in this time and context as what being a man is, then I need to live up to that. I need to show that I can take on a silverback gorilla. And I get upset when people suggest that I couldn't win a fight with a silverback gorilla, right? Because that's, undermining my dominance, I guess.
And by extension of that, your masculinity, which is just an identity that you've really ascribed to.
Exactly.
Probably out of, just people aren't aware of this a lot of the time. Do you think this kind of takes away from the general humanity, like the general human experience? Because it just always makes me really sad when people have to fit in very like enclosed, whether they be binary roles or they're just like very boxed in roles.
I think it is. I think it's tragically sad that, we have generations of young men and young women, who feel that they need to fit into these specific roles that, again, are just culturally prescribed. There's nothing that says that we have to behave in this way. It's all about kind of culture and place and context. And this is why we see masculinity being very different in different cultures and different contexts, right, to what it is perhaps in our very, very Western industrialized type of culture. So, but I think it's absolutely tragically sad that there's a whole generation of young men who feel that they have to fit into this box, and they have to, they have to be jacked and go to the gym and eat creatine for breakfast, and they also have to, it just kind of fit into these sort of prescribed roles. I think it's tragically sad, and I think the pushback against that gets a lot of flack, I think, and again, it's a misunderstanding of what we mean when we say things like toxic masculinity, right? So no one's saying that you can't go to the gym. No one's saying that you shouldn't be confident and make money and all of that sort of stuff. But we're saying that you don't have to do that in order to be quote unquote a man.
And it makes me think a lot about like stories, right? I've been deep diving into stories and narratives recently for research, but it makes me think about the stories that are out there, like the narratives that are out there for, say, young men to know about and to inform their behavior. Like you say, Pete, kind of them being trapped in this box, and actually the narratives that are being told, or that, yeah, we need to be doing all of these quite like toxically masculine behaviors. So is this then telling us something about the stories that are being shared? I guess the ones that are being shared around like social media are perhaps these more toxic ones that are getting more kind of hits, like more clickbaity things, rather than actually, I don't know what the right term is, but like a normal masculinity, if you like a healthy masculinity. What does that look like? So something around, how these stories are living, I guess, within our world at the moment, and how some of them just aren't being heard or told.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to look at social media and say, well, like these are the stories that are being shared, and the stories are the ones with the most clicks, and the tech bros and the dude bros, and right. I think it's really easy to look at social media and say that, but I think we also have to think about the fact that this has always kind of been there, long before social media came around, right, and still is. The way that we are socialized from a very, very young age to fit into these prescribed gender roles, like that still exists. So, you walk into any supermarket or any clothes shop, and in 2025, we still have the clothes section for boys where all of the t-shirts have got like tanks and dinosaurs and spaceships on them, and all of the girls'
all
clothes.
The cool stuff.
All the cool stuff. But even that, right? We're saying that like tanks are cool and like unicorns and fairies and stuff are uncool. Well, like why is that? Unicorns can be cool, right?
I love unicorns personally.
Yes,
right? But
and fairies.
But it's 2025, and that we still have that. Like that still exists. Mm-hmm. So from that very young age. We're taught that boy stuff is about aggression and violence and fighting and blah blah blah, and girl stuff is about flowers and unicorns and fairies and sort of pink and like so those messages still exist without social media being involved at all.
Yes.
It makes me think of because we're lucky enough to be in the space that generally accepts that gender is performative, and you can take on that performance however you want. So that's masculinity, femininity, however you want to, I guess, capture gender as performative. And it's always been performative. So, like the fact that, what was it, like 150 years ago, pink was a traditionally male color because it was like close to red and that meant blood. So it's still relating back to that violence thing. But now it's a girl color and it's all bows and stuff like that. And it's completely switched. And so you're, men would wear pink to perform their masculinity, and now it's the opposite. And I think masculinity norms they've always been performative, but there's like this increased need with social media and with the way the world is right now, because it's so, I guess, ideologically just divided in a lot of places. Like, for example, when you mentioned the grocery in the stores, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the store Target in America, but they decided to just make a kids section, not gender the kids section. And this was maybe 8 years ago or something like that. When they did that, the like the lash back they got from it was crazy. And it just shows you how deeply ingrained this performance is in people. And now you have this performance in the digital spaces. So you have the trad wife, which I don't problematize, you know, traditional housewife. What I do problematize is when it comes to like a slippery slope into like right-wing propaganda. That's what I struggle with. You have like the alpha and the sigma male, which we'll get into in a bit. And they just fuel this like insecure identity performance online. And I just wanted to ask you guys, what toll do you think this takes on us?
I think it takes a huge toll on us. I think the pressure to live up to this idealized version that's presented to us, I think that takes a huge toll, because again, you know, the world of social media is one of comparison. So we're constantly fed this, you know, this never-ending stream of, well, this is what your life should be like, right? This is what you should be doing in terms of your health. This is what a perfect relationship should look like. This is how much money you should be making, right? All of these things are just like fed to us constantly. And like a psychologist, you know, we know about the problems with the difference between that idealized self and the actual self, right? And that's what we're faced with on a daily basis, right? This, well, I'm here and all of these people, and, you know, make no mistake, all of these people online, that their lives are carefully curated. Like, this isn't real life, but we see it as that. And then there's this discrepancy between, okay, well, here's where I am and here's what my life looks like. This absolute car crash horror show of the life that I've got going on, you know, versus this kind of idealized version. And that creates like huge problems.
Sometimes as well, even if it's, say, like, even if our life isn't necessarily like a car crash, but we're just trying to do something different or do something that is more for us, outside of that norm, that can be so difficult as well.
Yeah.
And even it just might be simple things. This is things I think about quite a lot, like in terms of what clothes am I wearing? Like, what's acceptable for me to like wear on a like work call or go into work like wearing. I know we've had conversations with like Kristin before around like getting tattoos and going to work. Like, there's so many different assumptions kind of around what we should or like shouldn't be doing. Some of them very old and kind of not necessarily like with us anymore, like in a more modern society. But I think these decisions that we're then making on a daily basis, whether it is from the food that we eat, the people we talk to, the way we present ourselves, so all kind of impacted by these topics that we're discussing.
Totally. And I think it almost like when you see yourself having to make these decisions and overthinking everything, and then you see these people who are posing as invulnerable, and say maybe people that don't maybe have the same resources that we have, and you see these invulnerable, amazing, perceived as amazing people online, but you've got your own stuff going on in the background. Of course, you're going to want to emulate that, and and they know that, and they know that they're also not invulnerable, but this kind of presentation of it is how they can capture an audience. So I think maybe if we kind of transition into a conversation about this invulnerability myth, and I want to start by showing a video that Laura will definitely have never seen anything like this ever. This is called The Truth About What Women Want in Men. So Laura, you and I are about to learn what we really want.
Women are attracted to alpha males, period. I feel very sorry for the masses of men that have bought into the notion that being a beta male, being more in touch with your emotional side, is actually what they find attractive. That's absolute bullshit. Women want a confidence is very seductive, a confident man that knows exactly what he wants in his life, that is out fighting tooth and nail, fucking in the trenches,
fighting gorillas
to get better, which is and be proud of. Not a man that sits there cries about how in touch and beautiful things are. While that is good in some senses, they want alpha men that fight, that are confident, that are driven to achieving their goal.
Music.
And if you are confident and you can exude those things, women will find you attractive. Don't buy into the propaganda and the bullshit. This has been the same since day one.
So,
Well,
Oh my goodness.
I'd like to quickly say that Jack spent an hour trying to save a bee this morning. And I know.
That's so nice.
And I was like, you know what? Apparently, according to this video, I should be repulsed by that. So,
Yeah, apparently so. Yeah, get rid of it.
disgraceful. Disgraceful.
Get him to
behaviour.
kill the bee. Kill the bee.
he would cry.
No, don't.
Yeah, I'll let you guys take it from there.
Well, I mean, where do you even start? I mean, I guess that. No, but I mean, the question I've got with all of this stuff is, and we'll maybe touch on this a little bit later, is like, does he really believe the things that he's saying? Like, does he actually believe this stuff, or does he have a link to a web page where he can teach you how to be a real man for $800 a month? Like, because that's the grift. That's the entire grift. But I think, like, I mean, I have so much to say about the whole concept of alpha males. Scientifically, there is no such thing as an alpha male, right? A guy in the 1970s who was a little bit too obsessed with wolves, right? Spent a lot of time with wolves, wrote a book, and he described the sort of the behaviors of this wolves. And he talked about the alpha wolf, who was kind of the leader of the pack, dominant, etc., etc. And then he published this book, and very, very shortly afterwards, admitted that, yeah, I was entirely wrong about all of that. But it was too late, right? So this idea of like alpha males stuck, and again, men with something to sell decided that, well, we need to be like dominant, and we need to be this alpha, and you know, the beta males, these are sort of lesser males, and I need to be like dominant and strong and blah 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 blah. So it's not true. They don't exist, right? It's not how people work. It's not even how wolves work.
No, wolves, they
just
live in
isn't.
family units, don't they? They're family units.
Exactly.
There's the not a dominance hierarchy like we think of, and patriarchy or
Right.
other white supremacy or all the other structures. Yeah.
So alpha males, beta males, sigma males, it's all bollocks. It's all bollocks. And I have no, you know, I don't get anything for saying that. I'm not. I have no, you know, stake in this. It's all bollocks. But the other thing I'm curious about is, like, why do we have to fight all the time? Like, is that attractive? Like, is that a thing? We just go around fighting people and things?
Oh, I'm just still thinking, like, why is this guy saying this stuff? And I don't know. It's almost scary. Like, the things he was describing in that video, I was like, that makes me feel scared. I don't want to be near a person who is like how he's describing. Yes, give me someone who's seeing the beautiful things in the world. So then it is interesting how almost like this like false information, like Pete's saying, has just stuck with us, and for some reason I guess resonated with people as something that they are aspiring towards. But why is that something to aspire towards, and something that seems important that we have obviously, I guess, as a society decided to keep and continue?
I think, if you don't mind me just dropping in real quick, there's been some discourse on that recently, which I found really interesting online. I don't know if it's Ollie Murs. I think it's him. I don't know if you guys have seen this posted that online, like the before and after of like this crazy, I don't know if it was like a CrossFit or like crazy diet he was doing as well. And he had his before, which he was just like in shape. He's been to the gym. And then the after, which was just like, he's been cutting, he's been like just like in crazy CrossFit or whatever it is shape. And they did a poll of who, you know, what do you find attractive before or after? And men overwhelmingly said after, and women overwhelmingly said before. And this guy was like, why are women always lying? And so I think that a lot of this time, this performance it's not for women, it's for other men.
I think this is really interesting, because I was going to bring up that exact same thing about the Ollie Murs thing. And I think it comes back to this grift thing, right? And people having something to sell. So, you know, if people have a vested interest in saying, well, women are lying to you, right? Women are lying and you should listen to other men. Because if you believe what women are saying, then there's no need for me to exist anymore with my online PT coaching. I can get you shredded in 6 weeks, right? There's no need for me to exist anymore because that's not what people want. But I think it's really easy for men to fall into this trap of, like, when you're, I guess, feeling vulnerable, right? When you are having these messages reinforced that, okay, so toxic masculinity means that men are toxic. Like, it doesn't. But when you're told that being masculine and strong and, you know, fighting gorillas, like, that's a bad thing, right? And that's what the feminists want you to believe. They want you to believe it's a bad thing. Like, it's all nonsense. But that's the message that's being reinforced, right? So we should be the alpha male and we should be tough and we should be strong, right? So when that message is really reinforced, it's really easy for people to say, well, I can solve this problem for you, right? Don't listen to women. Don't listen to what they say they want in a man. Like, listen to me, because I can sell you the solution, right? I can get you shredded in 6 weeks. I can teach you how to, you know, trick women into liking you with all of these pickup techniques, right? I can teach you all of this stuff. And, like, it's really easy for young men who are perhaps feeling a little bit disaffected, who are perhaps feeling like, okay, well, you know, I'm hearing this all the time that, you know, men are toxic, and, you know, this is a kind of constant message. It's really easy for them to latch onto this and think, okay, well, actually, maybe these guys are right. Maybe I shouldn't listen to women at all. Maybe I should listen to the person who's trying to sell me something. So we can kind of criticize that, but I think it's also really easy to see how that happens.
Yeah. It's almost like there's the, you know, do we open up to the vulnerability, which is, I guess, a really difficult thing to do a lot of the time, right? Or do we move towards almost trying to actually, solve the problem, trying to find a solution which almost, like, maybe even seems more tangible to people. So, okay, I'm going to get a PT and I'm going to go get shredded, rather than I'm going to be vulnerable and turn into my emotions. Like you say, they're neither of them are necessarily like easy routes, but I suppose it's, they're taking you, I suppose, to very, very different outcomes.
I think, like, taking the systemic approach in a system that values one side but not the other, that discourages that emotional intelligence, it's almost an easy decision. And I think this is something that we talk about all the time on this podcast. We can problematize the individual behavior, but really the issue is the people and the algorithms and all the stuff that are promoting this. I mean, it's easy when you're in this really kind of still developing, especially most of this stuff is aimed at, you know, young boys and adolescents and young men, all under the age of 30, who are still looking for their place in the world. They're still, you know, growing and developing their identity. So it's like if you're looking at it from a logical capitalistic point of view, it's prime real estate. And so it's trying to hit that balance of, okay, where do we address, which I think I do want to get into that specifically after one more video, because I think I want to have a well-rounded exploration of, like, what are we actually going to do about it. But first, last video. And Laura, this is the suitcase guy. I couldn't find the suitcase video. Pete, you do stuff with this guy's videos all the time. And
is this Planet Mike?
Yeah, Planet Mike.
I love Planet Mike. Planet Mike is the best.
I think he's deleted loads of his videos like this. I couldn't find, and so the issue is my entire algorithm is all people problematizing or making fun of this kind of stuff, so I couldn't find any of the original videos. But his Instagram and TikTok describes him as gut health and hormone specialist. So Laura, do you have any idea what to expect from this next video, knowing that he has a gut and hormone specialist?
I mean, I guess you'd like to think it was somewhat scientific.
You would like to. Get ready.
Stepping in and out of your car may ruin your first impression. Some of you would be leaning over, bound down to a car.
I'm actually seeing this.
I couldn't find any original videos
Never
of this.
bow down to your car. You don't have to look at the door handle. You know where it's at. Open it. Keep it straight. Take a step forward. Grab the steering wheel. Sit down. Call yourself a real car? Stop ruining your first impression.
Great
Wow.
gut health and hormone advice.
I see all of that, all of the science.
Yeah.
It seems very legit. Got it. Yep.
Look, this guy Laura, he's got basically a whole range of videos on how to do things in a manly way. So those things include taking a drink, standing up, sitting down, walking,
Rolling a suitcase.
rolling a suit, just all of the mundane things that nobody really cares about. He's got a whole series of videos on how to do them in a much more manly way.
Crazy. But people seem
yeah.
to, if he's getting this many, views, it seems to be something that people want.
I think yeah, I mean, I think it is, and that, he's not alone by any means. There's a load of people who are kind of doing the same sort of thing. But I think the saving grace and the thing that kind of gives me some strength is the fact that a lot of the videos are people making fun of him.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. I think that's why, because I went on his Instagram and his TikTok, and all of those are gone. It's all like fitness. Yeah, as of this morning. And so that's why I thought before we get into kind of like what are we going to do about this situation, it might be good to talk about. Obviously, you mentioned that alpha male branding is complete pseudoscience that we're probably not going to get away from for a while. But these guys are trying to sell resilience, which is obviously a term that we work with a lot. If you're listening to the podcast and not watching, I'm doing that in very heavy quotes because it's not the resilience that we talk about, but it's a very rigid, extreme, like one size fits all answer to this. So like hustle culture and ice baths and like gut health guys that teach you how to approach a car properly. And so I think that because these guys are turning to these guys for like, okay, well, this is how I get my resilience. This is how I wake up at 4 a.m. to do this routine that takes 2 hours before I go to the gym, and then I'll be happy and then I'll be disciplined. Like one of the most common kind of things I'll get online comments wise is, yeah, but people like Andrew Tate, the majority of his content isn't this horrific kind of harassment and assault based stuff. It's mostly like teaching men discipline. Same with Jordan Peterson. It's teaching them XYZ. Yep. And it's just this pipeline into the more harmful behaviors. So I think there's an entry point. So, what are we doing? Because I think if people are continuing constantly to engage in this content and try and emulate their lives after this, just like any kind of extreme behavior. Like when we're saying toxic masculinity here, we're saying like you're taking a masculine trait and taking it to extreme levels, just like you can do that with any other trait. I feel like that's just going to cause stress. I feel like that's just going to make your burnout in this world worse because we don't have a lot of systems in place to support stress and mental health and well-being. So yeah, just this concept of burning out under this unattainable invulnerability. I just wanted to get your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I think you're absolutely right. And first of all, just to kind of say, I wholeheartedly agree with what you were saying there about, Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson. Like they'll say, 12 things that seem reasonably sensible, like tidy your room, right? Yeah. That's a sensible thing to say. Absolutely. Yeah, great. Brilliant. And then the 13th thing is something horrific, right? So there's, first of all, it's being aware of that, right? Being aware of it and kind of just noticing that that's happening. But yeah, the burnout stuff is real. And a lot of my research is in burnout in sport. If you think about what burnout is, it's this sort of emotional and physical exhaustion, right? Just from the kind of grind of constantly trying to keep up with everything that's going on and that pressure. And again, we can see that there are parallels here with the things that we're talking about, that sort of pressure to perform. There's something called a reduced sense of personal accomplishment, which is feeling like no matter how much you're doing, you're just kind of not getting anywhere. Again, parallels here. We talked about this kind of ideal to live up to, and it's an unachievable ideal, right? So that's where that comes in. And then there's a sort of development of kind of cynical attitude towards relationships, towards work, towards the kind of things that you're doing. Again, huge parallels with all of the things that we've been talking about here. So burnout is absolutely real and a real response to all of this stuff, right? I always talk about burnout as being a perfectly rational response to an environment and to a system that's designed to, cause us these kind of levels of stress, rather than it being kind of an individual problem, something that's kind of wrong with you. But I think part of it is this culture that just celebrates overwork, right? So regardless of the things that we talked about, it's this culture that just celebrates this, stress and burnout as kind of like a badge of honor or something. And again, that's reinforced by all of these sales dudes, like Andy Elliott's another one, right? You got to be working like 25 hours a day, and if you're not doing that, you're letting your family down. And you should be getting up and doing all of these things like the ice baths, early morning routines, journaling, meditation, exercise, blah 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 blah. And there's nothing wrong with those sort of individual elements, right? We know that practicing gratitude has a positive impact, right? We know that journaling can be helpful. We know that exercise is good for our mental health. But when we're trying to package all of this stuff together in terms of you have to do all of this stuff, all right, and if you're not doing it, then you're sort of some sort of failure as a person, as a man, then of course that's going to drive the stress and burnout. So I think the first thing is just kind of seeing all of that stuff for what it really is, just seeing that kind of nonsense grind culture as being just unrealistic, and it's designed so people can sell you stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think in previous episodes we've kind of spoken about how it almost it takes away a choice, and I think that's what maybe me personally kind of always find difficult is well, there's all of these things I'm meant to be doing, surely that means I've got to do all of them, rather than actually sitting and choosing which ones might actually work for me, which ones do I enjoy, which ones do I find value in. It's we're just taking everything at this almost quite face value and then trying to do it and trying to almost be the best people we can be. And it is when does that get to the point when it isn't sustainable, when it isn't helpful for us?
We recorded an episode last week where we talked about over-optimization and how in the current world, between capitalism and technology, we've got an app for everything. We feel like we need to optimize our gratitude, optimize our mindfulness, optimize every aspect of our lives. And I just think that contributes so much to just this broader sense of burnout that people can't put their finger on. And it's very non-specific and very broad. Is it possible for there to be that broader sense and then more specific aspects of burnout, say this maybe gendered aspect of burnout that might be more harmful to your well-being, and then this kind of crazy combination of over-optimization and gendered expectations and other expectations that can just really have an impact?
Yeah, I think because burnout essentially is just a response to chronic stress. Right, it's ongoing, unmanaged stress, and burnout's kind of the almost inevitable consequence of that. And there's a couple of other things that play into it as well. And one of them is and I think it's relevant here, is commitment, how committed we are to things, right? And a researcher from I can't remember if he's from the USA or Canada, Tom Radicke, talked about this idea of commitment in terms of being attracted to something. So I'm committed to this endeavor. So maybe looking after my health or whatever, health and well-being. I'm committed to it because I'm attracted to, I want to do it. I'm interested in doing it. It's important to me. And, I like doing it. The costs of doing it are pretty low. The benefits are pretty high. Great. But there's another form of commitment called entrapment. And entrapment is where I have to do it. So if attraction is I want to do it, entrapment is I have to do it. And the benefits are sort of not that great. The costs of it are quite high. There's a sort of lack of alternatives. I feel like I'm stuck in this situation. And this is where some of the stuff we've been talking about comes in, right? This feeling of being stuck in this. Well, I have to do this because this is what is expected of me, right? Whether that's, and again, you asked if there's a sort of gendered component to that. And I think there is, because there are different expectations placed on men and women around this idea of health and fitness, for example, right? And diet and nutrition. So there's this kind of idea of being stuck and trapped in a sense of I have to do these things. And if we're experiencing all of the stress and we're feeling entrapped, then that massively increases the likelihood that we're just going to end up burning out. So I think, yes, that there is certainly a gendered component to it, but it comes in terms of the way that we're committed to things.
I just thought it was funny as you were describing, Pete, that like first type of commitment. I was almost thinking like, that would be great, wouldn't it? Like, wouldn't that be nice to kind of have? And I think, we're probably looking that we have it in like some ways, but certainly there will be areas where we are feeling this, I guess, sense of being trapped. And I think that almost seems like the norm for me when I'm thinking about commitment. It's almost like with commitment, it feels like there is something that you have to sacrifice alongside it, rather than actually it being something, I'm committed to it because I love it and I really want to do it. And like you say, kind of there aren't that many risks perhaps. But I think for me, which is maybe something I haven't noticed before, that alongside commitment, it feels like there's often sacrifice. And I don't know if that's coming from like a sporting kind of context. Perhaps that's the sort of vibe that lives within that space.
Well, I think there is sacrifice. I try to not use the word sacrifice. I try to use the word compromise instead.
Yeah.
Specifically in sports settings, because I think we get into dangerous territory where we say, well, you have to sacrifice your, family because you have to be at training. Yeah. You have to sacrifice this in order to do that.
You're the guy fighting the gorilla first.
Right.
Sacrificing yourself.
Yeah. No, so rather than sacrifice, I guess, I talk about it in terms of compromise, and that's understanding that, there's lots of things that I want to do here. There's lots of things that are important to me. And actually, I do have to compromise sometimes. That's a reasonable human expectation. And part of the pressure comes when we feel like we can't. We feel like we have to do everything, like you were saying before, right? But I can, I want to go to the gym 3 times a week, right? And I want to get up and exercise in the morning. But actually, last night, I didn't get in till midnight because I was out late. And, I'm not going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go training today. Right? I'm compromised because of the thing that I was doing the night before was also something that was important to me. So on this occasion, that took precedence. I can't do everything all of the time. So compromise has to be sort of built into this system, right? Otherwise, we are doomed to fail. And that sort of pressure to do everything, which again is sort of reinforced through these social media messages, that's one of the things that I think is a huge component of this trend towards burnout.
Would you go as far to say that this idea of almost compromise is important, I guess, for us coping with this? I'm kind of thinking more towards, if we're thinking about what is actually helping us to say either mitigate or minimize, I suppose, experiences of burnout, is this compromise something that's important, or are there other things that you see as really important that people can do to kind of help themselves? Or is that, again, putting it too much on the individual? And should we avoid that?
Well, that's a really interesting question, because I think there absolutely are things that individuals can do, right, to mitigate burnout, to manage stress a little bit better, to deal with expectations. One of the things I talk a lot about is values. We work sort of heavily underpinned by acceptance commitment therapy, and sort of thinking about values and what's really important to us. And part of that is thinking about what our values really are, right? In terms of family, in terms of relationships, in terms of work, in terms of health, our values in all of these different areas. What's really important to me? How am I doing in terms of moving towards those values? But there's an understanding, again, that there's going to be compromise. So if I think about the world of elite sport where we work, right? Yeah, absolutely. There are going to be times when birthdays have to be missed because there's it's the Olympics, fuck, right? There's going to be, what am I going to do, right? There's going to be times when holidays have to be cancelled because this, that, and the other. Like, that's going to happen, right? But that's okay because, like, I have values in sport that I'm moving towards by doing that. But I can't do that all the time. Sometimes I have to compromise. Sometimes my values in terms of my family are going to take precedence. Sometimes my values in terms of my health are going to take precedence. So it's about understanding that compromise and that sort of flex and sway, I suppose. Other kind of individual things that people can do. Thinking about self-care, right? And self-care, again, gets a bad rap, particularly, going back to where we started, in the manosphere, right? But self-care doesn't have to be about taking baths surrounded by scented candles, right? It doesn't have to be that. It's about what's important for you, what's good for your self-care, right? I play video games. I'm 46 and I play video games because I enjoy it, right? But I also get up early and train because I enjoy it, because it's good for my mental health. So it's thinking about, like, what are the things that bring you joy, right? And making sure you're doing at least some of that in different aspects of your life. So it's about having multiple parts to your identity, right? So there are individual things that we can do, but there are also bigger systems things that we need to do. And one of those is, again, looking behind the curtain and seeing this grind for what it is, right? What's this person trying to sell you? Why are they trying to give you these messages over and over again? Why are they trying to tell you that, like the Ollie Murs example, right? Well, women are lying to you. No, they're not. So, so there are individual things that we can do, but there are much kind of bigger societal, systems-wide type approaches that are important. The first one I would say is just listen to women.
That'll be a nice little clip for all the people that like to yell at me online.
No, but it's absolutely true. Just like listen to it. Like, why? Just listen to what women are saying. Like, it's not hard.
I can't wrap my head around, just maybe it's because we are literally all trained in listening, but just not listening to people in general and taking what they say to you plus their actions at face value. But that could be a whole other tangent that I will not go off on right now. But one last question just on that topic. Say you have, whether it's somebody ingrained in, it could be a guy maybe ingrained in the dude bro science, or, even a woman maybe ingrained in trad wife stuff. What do you say to somebody who might have a bit of ambivalence? So they're kind of stuck in this cycle. They have been for a while. They're getting a lot of their identity from this, not outside identity work, but they're maybe starting to recognize awkwardly that maybe this isn't good for me, but I don't know what else to do, and I don't really want to move forward, and they're quite stuck. What are your thoughts about maybe like one or two things that might be helpful in that situation for them to maybe move through that?
Oh man, that's a big question.
Sorry, that's like really aggressive. But your two conversation made me keep building and building on the conversation. On the question.
No, it's a big question, and I don't know if there's like a single answer to it. I think, it's really difficult to reason somebody out of an argument that they weren't reasoned into. Right, and lots of these types of arguments about masculinity and femininity are like they appeal to people's emotions. Is what I was saying a little bit earlier on, right? About the guy who's feeling a little bit detached from society, lacking in confidence. Right, it's really easy to appeal to that emotion and say, well, look, I've got the solution for you. Right. So how do we kind of break that down? One of the issues that I think we have is just like a fundamental misunderstanding of lots of these terms that are thrown around. Right. So toxic masculinity is one of them. And I saw a post literally about half an hour before I came on, before I logged on, saying like, men are toxic, men are awful, men do this. Like, no wonder, the rate of male suicide is so high if we're constantly being told we're toxic. And it's like, well, you've misunderstood what toxic masculinity is. But I can see why that's easy to do, because it's an emotional appeal to the situation that you are in at the moment, right? And, you guys know about cognitive biases, and like, we're bombarded with so much information that we just take shortcuts, right? We don't think properly about things. So if we just slowed down, right? If we just slowed down the way that we think about things, then we can start to see that, all right, well, okay, what do people mean when they say toxic masculinity? I'm going to put the emotion of the phrase to the side, and I'm actually going to take time, because I'm interested in it, because I'm invested in it, to find out a little bit more about this, right? We're told that feminism is bad and it's an attack on our masculinity. Okay, slow down, right? It's an emotional argument, right? Find out about it, look it up, like, properly, right? Do a cursory Google search. Right? 45 seconds and an internet connection, right? That'll do you. But, I think, like, if we can just slow down, then we start to be able to see the sort of logical fallacies that are presented to us with people like Jordan Peterson and Charlie Kirk, who for some reason the algorithm has decided that I need to see. Like, slowing down our thinking a little bit, so we can start to pick apart some of this stuff. Like, okay, well, why is these messages? Why am I getting these messages? Like, what are they actually saying? Like, let's talk about the patriarchy. Like, let's kind of, again, if you slow down for 5 seconds, you'll be able to see that, like, that's bad for all of us, right?
Yeah.
that has an impact, or a negative impact, on men and men's mental health, right? So we just got to slow down. Just slow down.
Yeah. Because we've totally got our natural shortcuts in our brain, plus the fast-paced world that we're living in now. The combination is just, well, it's burnout. It's lack of, it's compromised well-being. It's things like that. So I think it's important to, rather than over-optimizing yourself, but take that personal responsibility to slow down, get a grip on your humanity, question any cognitive dissonance you're feeling, and things like that.
I think just one more thing, I guess, as well to mention, is that I think, like, we also have a bit of a responsibility to not just assume that people are going to do this by themselves, right? So, like, as a parent, for example, like, I will actively teach my child, like, about this stuff, all right? And we should be telling our young men and young boys and encouraging them to have, like, an experience the full range of emotions that are available to them, all right? Again, we go back to that socialization we talked about at the start, right? Like, we have to have an active role in doing this, right? Name these emotions. What are they? What does it feel like, right? Well, that's fine. That's absolutely no problem. We should be encouraging them to do that, to explore different aspects of their identity, right? You like unicorns? Go for it.
Yes.
We can't just kind of expect this to happen and expect people to get to the age of 14 and 15 and be able to think about it for themselves. Like, we've got to be active in dismantling this stuff. It's not going to just dismantle itself.
Yeah. And I think it almost comes back to that, the vulnerability bit as well. It's like, actually, if we notice these emotions are coming up, like, that can be quite scary in itself, right? So, like you're saying, if actually we can help young people to kind of see these emotions and notice that they're perhaps not as scary as, like, we first thought that they might be, kind of unpack and understand them and feel them and allow them, then that can be really powerful, but really tough to do on your own.
Yeah, I think it's no secret amongst, like, our kind that emotional intelligence saves lives. It saves the lives of the person. It saves the lives of others. It's related to kind of, like, less committing of crime, and everything like that. And so I think that's a great way to, I guess, end this aspect of a little bit of personal responsibility, but overall just engaging in that emotional intelligence and vulnerability, and and that side of things. So to end, we've never done this before, but you inspired us when we were on your podcast to play a little game. And
God.
So,
my own fault.
Yeah, it's all your fault. You got yourself into it. And it's called Gorilla Strength or Human Insight. And essentially is this a real quote or is it made up by an alpha bro influencer or a meme? So I'm going to go through a few quotes and you're going to have to tell me, is it an alpha bro, a meme, or an actual psychologist? And I'm going to do my best to read. I'm going to try and read all of them in the same voice so I don't give any clues away. I just haven't really been able to figure out if I'm going to read them all as an alpha bro or all as a psychologist.
Okay. I'm legit nervous now.
Okay, number 1. Discipline is the shortcut. Emotions are the detour.
What are my options again?
Alpha bro, meme, or psychologist?
I feel like that's an alpha bro.
It totally is. So, popular red pill YouTuber. So, this one might be easy. You can either cry in the gym or cry in therapy. Either way, you're crying.
That's got to be a meme, right?
Yeah. Wow, you're nailing this.
Yeah.
Okay. Every man has
I've had practice.
Yeah. Every man has a war inside of him, and no one's winning.
I mean, I genuinely feel like that could be any of the three.
I know, that's what's hard about it.
I'm gonna go with meme. I think that's
Total. It's a meme from a parody masculinity account.
Nice.
Thank God.
Anger is often just sadness that doesn't feel safe.
What was that? Sorry, that.
Anger is often just sadness that doesn't feel safe.
That feels like a psychologist.
Yes. Oh my gosh, you're so good at this game. Just a couple more. Three more. Real men don't get offended; they get better.
That's a dude, bro.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
Okay. The nervous system always tells the truth, even when you won't.
That's a psychologist,
Yep.
surely.
Yep. Deb Dana. Never heard of that name before, but Deb Dana.
No,
I
me
hadn't
either.
heard of her before. And then last but not least,
Pressure.
last one. There is no such thing as a good man. There are only men who haven't failed yet. This is a bit of a trick question.
Hold on, I'm trying to figure out what that actually means.
Yep. Well,
One more time.
That should be the clue. There is no such there is no such thing as a good man. There are only men who haven't failed yet.
That's a dude, bro.
It is our favorite Jordan Peterson.
Oh, wow. Wow. So, yeah, this is an actual psychiatrist as well,
Yep.
isn't he? Well, I say actual.
Heavy quotes.
Jordan Peterson. Good grief.
Yeah. Laura, I can't even send you stuff on him because you just would never get back online ever again, and I need you to repost our podcast stuff.
Trying not to scare me off even more.
Yeah. Oh man, so that was our game. You've nailed every
That was
single
fun.
one, so I'm kind of
Yeah,
jealous
that
because
was
I don't think I would
impressive.
have. Yeah, especially like
Well,
the
I
meme
feel,
one.
Yeah, well, no, I mean, that's my competitive masculine side that's come out and
Yeah.
absolutely dominated that competition. So.
I should have had you compete against Laura, and then you could have just completely dominated as the
Oh,
man
right.
in the
Oh, no.
situation.
Thank goodness that didn't happen. With my lack of online knowledge, it would have been terrible.
No, it's purely your gender, Laura. It's because you're a woman. and
Oh
you hate
yeah, sorry,
competing.
gender.
Yeah. Oh man.
Well, on that, we always like to kind of close with, I guess, some final reflections from the conversation we've had. And I think something for me that's kind of stood out was this idea of commitment that you were talking about before, and understanding if that is, a commitment that is something you're doing because it's something you care about and you're passionate about, versus something that we feel like we're forced into. Sometimes we can't change those things, but I think that they can be useful things to reflect on within our own lives, whatever gender we may be, and to see how that influences our well-being, our levels of burnout, and so on. I don't know if Pete, do you have any kind of reflections that you think might be useful to close on?
No, I mean, it would just be reiterating kind of the things that we've said, really. So, I mean, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for coming
really
on.
Enjoyed the conversation. But I think, it's just about a little bit of self-awareness and a little bit of introspection and reflection, right? And like, we've all got the capacity to do that. And I think just spending a little bit of time thinking about, like, are the things that I'm doing, are the things that I'm listening to, are the things that I'm engaging with, are they ultimately helping? Like, or are they just making me feel crappy?
Yes.
And if they're making you feel crappy, like, do less of it. It's my psychologist tip, right? Yeah. Do things that make you feel better and do less of the stuff that makes you feel crappy. So I think just taking that little bit of time and reflection to just stop and think and slow down our thinking, like I was saying before, is probably what I would summarize.
Kristin, anything from you before we close?
No, other than just saying thank you so much, Pete, for coming on. It was awesome to have you on. And chat. Oh my God, sorry, my dog just farted so bad and it smells so bad. I couldn't even get through that. I was like, I couldn't even get through it. I've been.
Oh my goodness.
That was so bad. Oh my God, this is gonna smoke me out in a minute. That's so bad.
Oh no.
That's horrible. Oh my God. Hold on, let me.
What a way to end.
Let me regroup for a second. Oh my God, that was horrific. Okay. Hot tip: don't bring your lab in with you when you're doing a podcast in a tiny enclosed room. Anyway, Pete, thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome to have you on and chat about everything, and it was really interesting to get your takes and your expertise around burnout and your tips and your reflective tips and everything like that. So thank you so much for coming on and taking the time. I'm sure our audience really appreciates it as well. I will put all of your social links in the show notes. And then anytime like I'm posting the videos online, I'll tag you in it as well. But you can find Pete on Instagram and TikTok and his 80percentmental.com website. So thanks everyone so much for listening. As always, we probably left you with more questions than answers, but that's kind of the point. We love exploring the messy undercurrents of 100 men, 1 gorilla, and the myth of invulnerability. Try and say that 3 times. If you guys have any thoughts, questions, rage, we want to hear it. Drop a comment, message us, or shout into the void, but tagging us is much more effective. If there's any topics you'd like us to dig into next, get in touch. We're always up for new rabbit holes. And if you like this episode, please don't forget to follow, like, rate, whatever your platform allows, and tell your friends. You can find all of our links on the But Why Instagram page. Please head to the bio for everything. And remember, the first step to understanding is asking, but why?
Yay.